He slammed the phone down so hard the glass tabletop cracked beneath it. Don't come in tomorrow if you can't clean this up today. The voice came from the other side of the boardroom wall, but the words were for someone else now. Not me. Not anymore. And yet I stood there in the corridor of Marlowe's Strategies, holding a recycled Starbucks cup and a folder labeled London Finalized Ops, watching the chaos I used to contain swirl without me. It's funny what gets remembered and what gets erased. I spent 11 years at that company, not lounging in corner offices or coasting on legacy contracts like the founder's son and his little cotter of frat bros turned executives. No, I was the one flying overnight to Singapore to calm a spiraling client at 3 a.m., the one rewriting compliance briefs during New Year's Eve because legal forgot to file on time. The one who, when the floor was caving in during our Series C implosion, was quietly handed interim executive sign-off authority while half the C-suite was on retreat. That signature clause would end up mattering more than anyone realized, but I'll get to that. First, let's talk about building something from scratch while the men around you pretend you're just support staff with a fancier title. I didn't just build the London plan. I breathed it. From zoning to vendor negotiations to headhunting the first boots-on-ground team, every spreadsheet, every late-night call, every damn seat cushion choice, I touched it. And when I presented it to the board, the founder actually clapped. Not golf clap. Actual full palm contact. That night, I allowed myself a rare glass of wine. I even smiled. That was 6 months before Ethan slithered in. Quick note while we're here. If you've made it this far and you're into stories about sharp women staying calm while the boys burn the house down, do me a favor, tap that subscribe button and like the video. It really keeps the team running on more than just caffeine and spite. All right, back to the chaos. Ethan Stroud arrived like most bad ideas do, dressed too confidently for someone who still said synergy like it was a new word. He was the founder's son's pick. Fresh off some consulting stint in Dubai, armed with buzzwords, and a deep disdain for anyone over the age of 35 who didn't worship his spreadsheet macros. From day one, he had it out for me. The first time we spoke, I offered him a brief history on the compliance architecture we'd used for global vendor vetting. He nodded once and said, "That's cute. We'll optimize it." He optimized by gutting our oversight staff and outsourcing due diligence to a third-party firm run by his ex-roommate. Suddenly, I wasn't looped into calls. My London files went untouched in shared folders. I stopped receiving strategy calendar invites. When I asked the founder's son, Luke, if there'd been a shift in responsibilities, he just shrugged and said, "We're decentralizing. New energy." The same week, I got asked to train Ethan's hand-picked operations lead on our legacy systems. A 29-year-old whose last role was, get this, running a food truck collective in Austin. I trained her. I documented everything, and I waited. It's a special kind of burn, realizing that your success is only tolerated until it threatens someone else's shortcut. My relationships with the rest of senior staff, ice cold. Polite smiles, stilted nods in elevators. Nobody dared challenge Ethan. He was their meal ticket to the London expansion, and the rumor mill said that if it succeeded, Luke was going to make Ethan president of International. The brass was all in. Me, I was excess weight with too much institutional memory. But even then I kept my head high, because I knew something they didn't. Or maybe they'd just forgotten, like everyone always forgets the paperwork behind their own damn survival. Months earlier, during that temporary leadership vacuum, I was asked in writing to take executive signatory authority over funding and compliance. Clause 4.6b, change of control. Nobody rescinded it. Nobody updated it, so I waited. And when Ethan stood at the head of that conference table one gray Monday morning and said, "Victoria will not be part of the London expansion team moving forward," I simply nodded. My smile didn't reach my eyes. I stood, walked to my office, and began packing my things. No outburst, no big speech, no begging. I'd already downloaded the folder, and the covenant with my name on it. It happened in the West Conference Room, the one with the glass walls that make your humiliation visible in 360 degrees. Ethan, wearing his usual smug grin and that stupid brushed gold tie clip shaped like a dollar sign, yes, really, clicked through his PowerPoint like he was auditioning for a game show. Slide 3 hit, and the words London launch. Streamlined leadership model popped up in 36-point font. I already felt the blood draining from my face before he opened his mouth. "We'll be moving forward with a condensed oversight structure," Ethan said, not looking at me once. "That means fewer layers, tighter reporting, and new energy on the ground." Victoria's past contributions were foundational. He paused, almost as if he expected applause. "But she won't be involved in this next phase." Silence, not shocked silence. The kind where everyone had been briefed but me. Luke, the founder's son, wouldn't even make eye contact, probably too busy staring at his phone, sending another emoji-filled update to whatever yoga instructor he was pretending not to date. Across the table, Marcy from legal blinked slowly, like she didn't expect it to be delivered this bluntly. I caught one of the finance guys shifting in his chair, suddenly hyper-aware of how loud his coffee sip sounded. Ethan tapped his clicker again. Slide 4, London launch timeline. Just like that, he moved on. I said nothing. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew how much power silence could hold. I looked at him for a full 5 seconds, long enough for it to register that I wasn't going to protest, wasn't going to defend my record or demand an explanation. Just 5 seconds. Then I nodded once and said, noted, and that was it. I saw the momentary confusion flash behind his eyes. He expected pushback, emotion, an outburst. What he got was professional detachment, so cold it probably made his skin crawl. The kind of calm that only comes when you're already counting your moves 3 steps ahead. I didn't go back to my office immediately. I went to the break room, poured myself the last inch of burnt coffee from the carafe, and sat in the corner seat that overlooked the city skyline. My phone buzzed with Slack messages, mostly wide-eyed emojis and WTF? Texts from mid-levels who didn't know whether to comfort me or screenshot me. I ignored them all. I thought of every flight I'd taken, every night I'd spent editing cross-border compliance reports, while others played beer pong at the hotel bar. I remembered the time I missed my sister's engagement because I was sitting on a Zoom call trying to stop an overseas partner from defecting to a competitor. All of it, rewritten in real time, erased by a clicker and a phrase like new energy. But what hurt wasn't the exclusion. What hurt was the theater of it, the rehearsed nature. The timing. It was clear this decision had been made well in advance. The new ops lead, the one I'd trained, remember her, was already CC'd on emails labeled London Deployment Phase Roman 2. My folders had been cloned, my contacts copied, my name surgically removed from everything I'd built. I left the break room without finishing the coffee, walked straight back to my office, locked the door, and pulled out the manila envelope I'd tucked into my bag the week prior. Inside, my original signatory authorization letter. Clause 4.6b, still bearing the compliance stamp. Still active. By 3:15 p.m., my resignation letter was typed, proofed, and sitting in Ethan's inbox. No theatrics, just one line, effective immediately. I resign from my position as head of global operations. I wish the London team the best in their efforts. I attached a PDF version for legal. BCC'd myself. Then I cleared out my personal files, wiped the desktop, and slid my badge into a drawer. On the way out, I passed Ethan's assistant, who blinked at me with surprise. Victoria, are you? I smiled, not part of it, and kept walking. HR called me in with the enthusiasm of a dentist about to yank the wrong tooth. Two of them were waiting when I arrived, Danielle from Benefits and Mike from Compliance, both wearing their neutral concern faces like masks 2 sizes too tight. A third chair sat empty across from them, facing the little round table, and a beige folder labeled Exit Interview Hensley. Victoria, Danielle cleared her throat like she was breaking up with someone else's boyfriend. Victoria, thank you for joining us. First, we want to acknowledge your service and contributions. Truly. Mike nodded too eagerly. 11 years, that's significant. I tilted my head. You make it sound like I passed away. Awkward chuckles. Neither one made eye contact. They slid the paperwork across the table. I opened it slowly, pretending to read. I already knew what was in there, boilerplate nonsense. The kind of HR poetry that tries to cushion betrayal with phrases like transition facilitation and mutual understanding. And most important, a clean break. No contestation, no lawsuit, no whisper of a clause that could burn half the building down. Will Ethan be signing today? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Danielle checked her tablet. Yes, he's added a digital signature to your separation letter. You'll find it on page 4. I flipped to the page, looked at his little squiggle. That same signature had once been on a bottle of Moet he sent to Luke after closing a mid-tier acquisition. I remembered thinking then, God, this guy signs things too fast, and now, he'd just done it again, without reading, without remembering. I signed my part, slid the folder back, and smiled. I'll be out of the system by noon. Appreciate the quick process. Mike scratched at his temple. If you need help exporting any of your personal files, I've already handled that. I cut in, and I had. But what he didn't know, and what neither of them thought to check, was that 10 minutes before this little HR eulogy, I'd logged into the finance server one last time using my admin credentials. The system hadn't revoked them yet. Most people assume IT security works like a motion sensor, instant. But in reality, there's always lag between the acts and the cleanup. I bypassed the user logs, filtered by approval archives, and went straight to the folder labeled Capital Control Docs Authorizations Q3 Emergency Chain. My hands didn't even shake. It was exactly where I'd left it. The original PDF. Dated, signed, and annotated by legal, HR, and the board chair. Subject line, Executive Signatory Delegation Funding Crisis Protocol subsection. Clause 4.6b, Temporary Authority Reassignment Recipient. Victoria Hensley, Head of Global Ops. The clause read, in absence of an appointed CFO during the active Series C renegotiation period, full change of control authorization is delegated to the above party for all international expansion sign-offs and fund releases, pending written revocation. I hovered the mouse over that line. My name, clear as day, still lives, still binding. No digital revocation, No follow-up memo, no updated filing, and most important, no new signatory entered after Ethan came in. They'd all assumed someone else had handled it. Nobody did. I downloaded it, transferred it to a clean drive, encrypted the folder. Then I closed the lid of my laptop and smiled, not because I was happy, but because I knew. I knew Ethan had just launched a $550 million expansion based on paperwork that still legally pointed to me. He forgot the one thing you should never forget when steamrolling your predecessor. The ink always remembers. People expect a woman in my position to scream, to throw coffee mugs or post a cryptic onward and upward LinkedIn update with a faux inspirational quote under a black and white headshot. I did none of that. I went quiet. No farewell emails, no mass messages. I didn't even update my job status. I just disappeared, and that silence, it wasn't surrender, it was sharpening. I moved out of my condo in Midtown the following week, packed everything into 3 suitcases, left the rest in storage, and sublet a 2-bedroom in a part of the city where nobody knew what Marlowe's strategies even was. My phone stayed mostly on silent. Luke texted once, "Hope you're doing okay." You were always solid. I didn't reply. One of the junior analysts, Nadia, emailed asking if I wanted her to mail me the London coffee mug I'd left behind. I said she could keep it. Let them think I was licking wounds. Let Ethan believe I'd vanished, irrelevant. That was easier for him. The truth, I was watching and reading and learning. There's a kind of grief that doesn't wail, it researches. It prints PDFs at 2 a.m. and studies SEC filings with a bottle of Merlot and a yellow highlighter. I dove headfirst into compliance law, international fund authorization, and every single contract Marlowe had filed in the last 2 years. I already knew the bones, but I wanted the nerves, the soft tissue, the stuff that bleeds when cut. Clause 4.6b had been issued in panic. We were weeks from losing everything during the Series C collapse. Ethan hadn't even joined yet. Back then, I'd been the only one trusted to sign off during cross-border negotiations, while Luke was too busy crying in elevators, and the CFO resigned mid-flight to Paris. Legal had drawn up the emergency delegation, got it signed by 3 board members, and sent me the keys. It was supposed to be temporary. But temporary has a funny way of becoming permanent when no one bothers to clean up. I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Clay Richardson, a senior audit partner at Deller & Co., one of the firms Marlowe used when investors wanted second eyes on high-dollar expansions. We'd worked together briefly in Brussels during a VAT nightmare involving shipping invoices and a drunken procurement lead. He owed me. We met in the back corner of a sad little bar near Bryant Park, the kind with sticky menus and bartenders who don't ask questions. Clay was balding, tired-looking, and too curious for his own good. So he said, sipping something brown, "You're not at Marlowe anymore." "Correct," I said. "I have a hypothetical. Shoot. Let's say an international firm grants executive signatory authority to an operations lead during a funding crisis. Let's say it includes change of control powers over expansion assets. Now let's say that clause is never revoked. What happens when a new CFO launches a $550 million expansion?" He blinked. Hypothetically. He leaned back. That expansion isn't real until the original signatory signs off. If nobody updated the clause, the chain of authority's broken. Any investor funds tied to that control clause could be frozen, delayed at best, voided at worst. I sipped my drink. "Interesting. Why are you asking?" "I'm bored," I said, "and hypothetically curious." Clay smirked. "You're not bored, you're waiting." He wasn't wrong. But I wasn't about to hand him the whole story. I didn't need a smoking gun, just someone to confirm I still held the match. Meanwhile, back at Marlowe, Ethan was doing what new leaders always do when they think they've won, planning photo ops. I still had friends in low places, executive assistants, tech support guys, an intern I'd mentored who now ran the scheduling inbox. From them, I heard the buzz. Ethan had booked a press conference, had hired a PR team, had even been seen pacing around rehearsing phrases like vision alignment and legacy uplift. He was walking into a trap he built himself. Arrogance wrapped in PowerPoint, and I was content to let him keep walking. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning because, truthfully, it wasn't revenge, not yet. It was curiosity. Strategic, quiet curiosity. Like watching someone sit on a landmine and wondering if they'll feel the click. No threats, no lawsuits, no hints, just a whisper sent to an auditor, and a line in a contract they forgot to erase. It wasn't dramatic. No bold subject line. No threats of litigation or legalese fireworks. Just a plain, surgical line of text sent from a Gmail address I hadn't used since grad school. Subject, quick compliance question body. See clause 4.6b in the change of control section line 2. That was it. No attachments. No signatures. No explanation. I sent it to Clay at 2:12 a.m. on a Wednesday, half drunk on Pinot Noir, and rereading the clause like it was a Ouija board spelling out my enemy's fate. The cursor blinked at me in the quiet glow of my kitchen, and when I hit send, it felt less like action and more like pulling a single thread in a suit tailored with arrogance. Then, I waited. For 2 days, I heard nothing. I busied myself with meaningless tasks, reorganized my spice rack. Alphabetized insurance documents I'd been ignoring for years. Walked the same neighborhood block so many times the crossing guards started waving at me like I was part of the landscape. Meanwhile, I kept a digital ear pressed to Marlowe's walls. The interns had been roped into polishing presentation decks for the big London pitch. Ethan had scheduled a full board demo and called it Operation Crown. He was all in, bought a tailored navy suit for the occasion, bragged to someone in HR that he'd already drafted his quote for the press release. This move will redefine our international footprint, he supposedly said, sipping cold brew and waiting for someone to be impressed. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Investors were flying in from Chicago and Zurich. Even the founder, who hadn't attended a full meeting in over a year, was dialed in via a secure satellite line from whatever vineyard or yacht he currently lived on. The deal was real, the money, even realer. $550 million, the largest expansion tranche in Marlowe's history. And it was all balanced on a stack of assumptions, chief among them, that the paper trail had been handled. It hadn't. By Friday morning, Clay finally replied. Subject, quick compliance question body. Interesting, thank you. No further comment, but that was the point. For someone like Clay, a man whose entire personality was built on compliance protocol and understated dread, interesting might as well be DEFCON 2. The moment I read it, I leaned back and exhaled through my nose. It wasn't relief. It was ignition. That single clause was about to become the ghost in Ethan's machine. A forgotten fingerprint from a woman they thought had left quietly. And here's the best part. They had no idea it was coming. While I was folding laundry and pretending to binge documentaries, Ethan was lining up dominoes in his three-piece suit. I heard from a former ops manager that the promo videos were done. He'd filmed himself striding across the new London office blueprint like he was conquering Normandy. Marlowe's social media team had posts queued. Emails were drafted to the press. All that was missing was final investor sign-off, which, per standard procedure, would happen after full board review, legal confirmation of chain of authority, and auditor sign-off. I knew the process better than he did. I designed most of it. What Ethan didn't know was that the auditor, Clay, had just circled something in red ink. Something he couldn't ignore, something he couldn't legally unsee. And the thing about auditors, once they smell a clause out of alignment, they don't call to warn you, they show up with a pen. And a question. The stage was set. The lights were on. Ethan had his script memorized, but I had the line that would never let the curtain rise. The boardroom looked like a catalog photo for ego management. Polished oak table. Branded bottled water lined up like trophies. Wireless mics blinking red, waiting to capture something historic. Something impressive enough to justify $500 million moving through cyberspace with a few signatures and a round of golf claps. Ethan sat at the head of the table, practically humming. His tie was Windsor knotted with surgical precision, and someone had clearly told him he looked presidential, because the man hadn't stopped smiling since he walked in. His laptop was open but untouched. Everything had been printed, tabbed, and laminated. He'd rehearsed this day like it was his Oscar moment. All he had to do was not trip over himself. Thanks for joining, everyone, he began, standing just enough to feign humility before settling back down like a smug prince. I'll keep it tight, our London timeline's aggressive, and I'd hate to delay the champagne. Scattered chuckles. No one laughed too hard. This was money talk, not happy hour. On the screen to Ethan's left, the founder's son, Luke, peered via a secure satellite feed. Tan, relaxed, probably dialing in from a yacht. He sipped something iced and waved casually at the group. Looking good, team, Luke said, voice echoing just enough to remind everyone of his altitude. Let's keep this sharp. I'm only over Italy for another 90 minutes. Ethan chuckled and gave a small, mock salute. Copy that, Commander. Nobody mentioned me, not once. Not when they opened the slide titled Global Ops. Transition Roadmap, not when they patted Ethan on the back for assembling a nimble international leadership pod, and definitely not when they talked about the new energy guiding this next era. It was like I'd never existed, erased from the blueprint. That's the thing about streamlining, they always cut what they don't understand, and they never notice what they left exposed. The investors filed in a few minutes late. Clean suits, tired eyes, real money. The kind who don't bother shaking hands unless they've already wired the funds. One of them, an older man with a silver beard and zero tolerance for small talk, dropped his portfolio onto the table and said, "Let's get to it." And just like that, the meeting began. Ethan launched into his pitch. Slide after slide. Forecasts, projections, glossy office mock-ups, and a few well-placed jokes about cost savings. We've removed layers of inefficiency. Quipped at one point, lean is the new legacy. Everyone nodded. They liked the sound of that. Lean meant fast, fast meant money. Then the door opened. Clay Richardson walked in exactly on time, briefcase in one hand, notepad in the other. He didn't apologize, didn't smile. Just took the empty chair near the investors and started flipping through his folder like he was prepping for a colonoscopy no one had agreed to. Ethan's face twitched. Just a little, Clay, he said, voice pitched high with artificial warmth. Thanks for making the time. We're just, going through final reviews now. Clay nodded but didn't respond. He pulled out a highlighter and uncapped it. Nobody noticed the shift, not yet. The air was still casual, still celebratory. Ethan even leaned back in his chair and said something about streamlining dead weight, followed by a quick wink at Luke on the monitor. The founder's son laughed and gave a little toast motion with his drink. They didn't know what was coming, but Clay did, and so did I. Not that I was in the building. I wasn't anywhere near it. I didn't need to be. I'd already done my part. A single email, one line, one reminder that the ink never lies. From here, all I had to do was listen. Because you don't need a seat at the table when you're the one holding the deed to the table itself. Clay was halfway through the binder when the temperature in the boardroom dropped 5 degrees. He'd been quiet up to that point, highlighting, making small notes in the margins, flipping with the kind of mechanical calm that makes people nervous for no tangible reason. But then he stopped. Page 147, midway through the compliance and signatory certification appendix. He squinted, frowned, then turned back a few pages, lips pursed, and finally cleared his throat. Everyone turned. Ethan paused mid-sentence. Clay adjusted his glasses and looked around the room. Section 4.6b, he said. Ethan blinked. Sorry, Clay tapped the binder, the change of control covenant. Who signed it? Silence. Luke, still on the screen, sat up straighter in his lounge chair. One of the Zurich investors leaned forward. The silver-bearded man looked up for the first time in 15 minutes. Ethan stepped forward, slightly flushed. That's all been processed. Legal, reviewed everything. Then where's the signatory? Clay asked, cutting him off without looking up. There's no signature on the authorization line. Just a name referenced in a funding memo from last year. He flipped the page toward the group. Sure enough, at the bottom of the document, beneath the bold heading Signatory Change of Control Authorization, the line was blank. The field, untouched. The only thing present was a dated note that read, Default authority delegated to Victoria Hensley per Board Directive 3/14. Ethan leaned in. He stared at it like it had turned to Sanskrit. That can't be right, he muttered. Clay raised an eyebrow. Is the clause still active? Ethan didn't answer. One of the board members, Carla Jensen, a no-nonsense logistics investor who had once threatened to sue a CEO for signing a term sheet in blue ink, spoke first. Wait, are you telling me that Victoria still holds the authority for international expansion? Clay shrugged. Based on this documentation, and in the absence of a revocation notice, yes. She's the last documented signatory with control powers under 4.6b. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. But she resigned. We processed her separation, and did you update the control covenant after her departure? Clay asked, eyes narrowing. Because unless that happened formally, on record, this clause remains binding. Ethan said nothing. He turned to legal, who suddenly found a great deal of interest in their coffee cup. The investor from Zurich coughed once, like clearing his throat might dissolve the tension now gripping the table by the throat. Then Carla again, does that void the control agreement? Clay didn't answer right away. He just laid his pen on the table, as if setting down a scalpel before delivering a prognosis. No valid signatory means no authorized transfer of control. No authorized control means the funds, technically, can't be released. Ethan was now fully pale, not nervous, pale. Luke's face on the monitor had gone dead silent. He looked like a man watching his yacht sink in slow motion. The Zurich investor snapped shut his portfolio. We can't proceed without compliance clarity. Another voice. Quiet this time, it came from Ethan. A whisper more than anything. A breath of dawning realization. Oh my God. Carla folded her arms. Did no one think to check this? Clay didn't gloat. Auditors never do. He just closed his binder and sat back, calm as a loaded gun. The room was stunned. But me? I was walking through a farmer's market 3 miles away, sampling strawberries and listening to the quiet panic that follows the echo of a forgotten name. Power of a blank line is that it looks like nothing. Until it stops everything. The moment legal re-entered the room, everything changed. They'd been gone for 15 minutes, an eternity in boardroom time. Carla had spent most of it whispering fiercely to Zurich, while Ethan sat frozen, fingers clamped so tightly around his pen that it snapped halfway through someone muttering material breach. Luke was still on the screen, his once lazy posture replaced with that frantic, reptilian stillness men get when they realize their money just tripped a wire. Legal placed a slim folder on the table and didn't sit. The lead counsel, a man whose face had always reminded me of wet cardboard, spoke without inflection. We've reviewed all active compliance filings, board resolutions, and funding covenants. Clause 4.6b was never revoked. There is no filed override. There is no post-delegation amendment. Authority remains solely with Victoria Hensley. Silence. Then Clay almost too softly. Meaning? Legal cleared his throat. Meaning the expansion is unauthorized. The control clause hasn't been satisfied. Per the investor agreement, the funds cannot be released. It landed like a body dropped in a still lake. No splash. Just ripples, one after the other, spreading out in stunned silence. Zurich packed up without comment. The silver-bearded investor stood and adjusted his cuffs. No valid control transfer. Funds are on hold. Ethan looked like he'd swallowed a lit cigarette. We can fix this, he croaked. It's an oversight. We'll reach out to her. We'll get a retroactive sign-off. Will Luke, still on screen, suddenly snap to life? Fix this, he barked. You said it was handled. You told me the damn paperwork was cleaned up. I thought it was. I don't pay you to think, Luke snarled. I pay you to not humiliate me in front of Zurich. You inherited that clause. Ethan shouted back, finally standing. She signed it before I even got here. Oh, so now it's my fault? Luke hissed. Your job was to scrub it. Your job. Clay stood up. Gentlemen, he said, voice cool and even. We'll reconvene once the signatory matter is resolved. Until then, there's no deal. Ethan lunged for his phone before the door even closed behind them, fumbled it out of his pocket like a drowning man grabbing a life preserver. Tapped my name. One ring, two, straight to voicemail. He tried again. Nothing, tried from a different line. Blocked. He even texted, please call me. Urgent, let's fix this. I saw it flash across my screen while I was in line at a flower stall, holding a bunch of tulips I'd bought for no reason other than they were orange and didn't remind me of anything. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That's the thing about strategic silence. It isn't passive, it's power choosing not to speak. While they scrambled for explanations, clawing at protocols and retroactive approvals like rats in a locked pantry, I strolled home in the sun, holding my flowers and listening to Ethan's panic echo in the silence between vibrations. Let them squirm. Let them feel it. The expansion didn't belong to them anymore. Ownership was in question, and I was the only one holding the answer. We met in a small conference room on the top floor of a private equity firm whose name sounds like a country club and a pharmaceutical company had a baby. The kind of place where the water comes in glass bottles and every chair is designed to make you feel important. The lead investor, Miles Decker, was already seated when I arrived, sleeves rolled, jacket draped over the chair like he had nothing to prove. He stood as I entered, extended a hand. Miss Hensley, he said, I've been looking forward to this. I shook his hand, sat down, and placed a printed copy of Clause 4.6b on the table like a chess piece. We didn't waste time. These meetings never do when real money's at stake. The papers were in front of him. The deal was dead unless I revived it. Everyone knew that. What mattered now was my price. I'm willing to sign retroactively, I said. Calm. Even, authorize the expansion, clear the funds, restore the covenant. Miles nodded, waiting, and I slid a thin folder across the table. Inside, 3 simple terms. First, 5% equity in the London operation, non-dilutable for 5 years. Not a vanity share, real ownership, something no amount of whiteboards or title changes could erase. Second, Ethan Stroud removed, immediately. No ceremony, no reassignment, no severance package dressed up as a promotion. Gone. Third, a board seat, permanent, not advisory. Voting rights included, the nameplate already engraved. I'd ordered it the day after the audit meeting. Miles reviewed each point silently. No raised eyebrows, no pushback. He didn't flinch, not even at the second demand. When he finally looked up, he just said, done. That was it. The most satisfying negotiation of my career, and I didn't raise my voice once. No tantrums, no retribution speeches, just precision. The papers were updated by legal that same afternoon. Ethan's name was scrubbed from the deal memo. Mine replaced it. Within 6 hours, Zurich re-engaged. Funds reauthorized, control restored. Marlowe's golden boy unceremoniously escorted out through the service elevator. No farewell lunch, no LinkedIn announcement. Luke never called me, but I know he saw the new board roster. He knows I'm back, knows I never really left. 2 days after the meeting, I found myself outside Marlowe's building. Not out of sentiment, just happened to be walking that block. I paused at the crosswalk. The glass facade glittered in the autumn sun, reflecting a skyline Ethan thought he'd own. I didn't look up, just smiled faintly. My phone buzzed, a message from Miles, welcome aboard again. I turned the corner and kept walking. No victory dance. No need. They cut me out of London, so I made sure London couldn't happen without me. Power doesn't shout. It signs the final line. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.